Hey everybody, welcome back to Music Theory Logic. My name's Andrew, and today I was going to go over something that a lot of people ask me about, and that is melody writing. And if you haven't seen any of my videos before, perhaps you haven't heard, but I made this textbook. It's called Music Theory for Electronic Producers, and it's basically a really simplified music theory method that, in my mind, I prepared for people that weren't necessarily schooled in sight reading or didn't have a background in music at all. The book comes with a bunch of different examples that you can download and use in your DAW. And today I'm going to be covering, like I said, melody writing. So if you do happen to have the book, and if you don't, I'll link to it below. I'm going to be talking about page 56. So on page 56, I talk about phrasing and then phrase manipulation. So let's go ahead and go into our logic session for the day. So here's a track that I have going. It's somewhat dark and intense, so it very well may be something that I end up trying to release to the world as d.r.u, my artist alias. Let's go ahead and listen to it. We are in the key of C minor. C minor has 3 flats. Those flats are E flat, G flat, and B flat, or E flat, E flat, A flat, and B flat. However, I'm also using B natural, which makes this C harmonic minor. Cool, let's go ahead and listen to the instrumental. There's no melody yet, and that's what we're here to change. It's kind of like a drawn out build-up. Here comes some drums. Cool. Pretty basic so far. You could probably tell that that was kind of like a sustained build-up section. So probably show you some filtering on the melody too. So I pulled up this preset in the Pigments synth. It's called Canned Lights. Pigments is, I've talked about it a bunch recently. It's a new synth I got from Arturia. Super cool. Highly recommend checking it out. So like I mentioned in the beginning, here's our scale. These are the notes that basically I'm using in everything that you just heard. So the chord progression I'm using is basically C minor, and then a B flat major 7, and then an E flat major in first inversion so that the bass line keeps going down. And then finally I use the dominant, the G major, created by this B natural, this note that's highlighted. Cool, so let's listen to this. Cool. Again, scales are basically patterns of notes that people like me, people that write music, use, whether they realize it or not, as the basis of writing melodies or chords, which I already did here. Cool, so we're just going to try to write some sort of melody, and I'll show you, I'll kind of do a few different ones. And first, we're just going to hear it over our chord progression, and then we'll go into repeating it or playing it over some drums. So when you're first writing a melody, one great thing, even if you don't play any instruments or aren't a singer at all, you could hum something, see if an idea comes to mind, and if you can hum it, chances are those notes are from our minor. So let's use our imagination here for a second. Cool, so I'm imagining something that's starting a little bit late, later than the 1. So like 2, 3, and 4, and 2, 3, and 4, and so we're gonna use notes from our key. A little bit of an arpeggio. Maybe we stick with quarter notes. Cool. So let me show you the basic concept of phrasing. So the way I like to think about this is as if I were a singer. Now, one of the things that I cannot do in music, at least at the level I can do a lot of other things, is sing. I would gladly give up some of my instrumental chops to have a voice, as super helpful. Most hit records you hear have singers on them, but it is what it is. However, we still want to think about like singer. Now, believe it or not, music before there were instruments, we still had our voices, and so the earliest music we have record of is music that people sang, primarily monophonic chants, Gregorian chants, if you will, and there's lots of other singing traditions around the world, but what's one of the things we have to do when we're using our voice? We have to breathe. So you could think of phrasing as sort of a single phrase is something you would sing on one breath. You could think of it as an idea that's connected. So we're going to talk about an answer or a question-answer sort of phrase, an A, B prime melody. So I'm going 1, 3, 1 in C minor on the quarter notes. Then I'm going to do some sort of answer here in the second measure. Cool. So this is a more sporadic answer. I mean, we could use our imaginations, get pretty abstract with this, but the first part, again, there's a break right here. That would be a breath. This first part is like, are you okay? And then this is like, no, I'm really not okay. Something's stressing me out. And then we could repeat our question, same rhythms. And then we could do a parallel phrase. So parallel phrase is one of the next things I talk about. We could think about this as doing like the same sort of answer here, rhythmically speaking. Perhaps we do some sequential motion. So I'd said the chord progression, the last of 4, which we're actually on like a twice as long of a chord progression. So our dominant doesn't happen here until the 7th and 8th measure. But we could do a different sort of run. So I was going from G, F, E flat. We could go like 1 up in the scale from, how about A flat, down, and we could repeat, let's say, the G. And then it's kind of cool that last note doing that, our out of key, or the thing that makes this harmonic minor, that leading tone. Again, the leading tone is the note that's right below any of our tonics. So B is right next to C, so that's our leading tone. Let's hear this. I like it. Cool. So repetition is our best friend in really all music composition. So I could start to repeat this, like another question, another answer, and then we could have sort of like a reflection or a final ending. What could be cool is to do some sort of fast arpeggio run on the chord that we're playing there, which is that G major. Another option is we could keep that sequence pattern going up. Let's try that. So the note, let's try a B flat here. Cool. Now let's go over our G with the B flat. or the A flat. All right. Let's show you that arpeggio. So we have been doing eighth notes as our fastest. Let's keep that. Actually, let's do a triplet. So I have my Logic presets. If you go into like set your key commands, if you're a Logic Pro user, you can look up set higher division in the MIDI channel. You could set it to something. I have it for hyphens. So I can move that MIDI to triplets. So then we're going to use a triplet for each of these. This will sound kind of crazy, but let's do a dominant seventh arpeggio run. So something like this. Notes in our dominant seventh are G, B, D, and F. So those are all the notes that I've used there. And then we could do a pattern, dun, 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 dun. How about if we repeat from there? So 3 in a row. We could keep going down there at the end. Let's hear our melody. Cool. So again, repetition is our best friend. So we basically created somewhat of a more sophisticated melody, if you will, than just a repeating 2-bar phrase. So we could have just repeated this first section, and that would work for a lot of styles of music. And sometimes, if you wanted to give your song some development, we could keep that first section repeating, and then maybe when our drums come in, we start to have everything changing. And then, like I said, perhaps we filter this because it is just an intro. We don't want to come at the listener like super loud and aggressive from the beginning. So if I turn on that EQ, this top shelf, I'm going to automate the frequency here so that I can create a custom low pass filter. I'm going to do it like this. Something sounds like it's glitching out here. Cool. So perhaps you like that, perhaps you don't. Fear not, we're going to write some alternative options. But before we do that, let's just say you like this melody and we want to create a little bit more tension right here at like 25 to 29 so that this drop section, we could add a marker so that this feels like a big section or a drop, whatever you want. So right here, we're going to start exaggerating our build, which means This is basically our intro. So using markers can really help you to understand like the sections of your song. So if you're trying to jump between sections, it's easier to find them. But it also, at this stage of the composition, can help us to just plan ahead. Cool. So tension. One of the other phrase manipulation techniques I talk about has a really fancy word. It's called diminution. And what diminution is it means to take this and to make it smaller. So for instance, we could get rid of all of this and go back to repeating this phrase. And then maybe the second time we repeat that once. And then perhaps we start taking that and cutting it in half. So I have to get out of that triplet view. So these are quarter notes. Then we would do eighth notes. A pattern like this. And then if we really wanted to, we could go to a 16th note. If we filter it out, we won't hear this as much. But there we go. This is, again, called diminution. You hear this in a lot of older classical music in sections where the music is going to transpose or something's changing. Me having the background I do, when I think about writing modern dance music, I kind of think of build-ups as those sections where things have to, the tension builds so that at the end of the build-up, either A, the tension builds so that we're going to do something like really intense dubstep, so it makes sense why it's so intense because the tension has built us to that point. Or perhaps we're doing something where we build the tension like in a house music build-up, and then the tension clears and there's sort of a crisp kick drum and bass line. That's also super cool sounding. So let's hear this. I'll zoom in on our MIDI so that you can watch it while we hear it. So that works. I almost don't even like the eighth notes. I think if we just repeat that pattern, that'll sound best. Cool. So you could hear how that perhaps would work. All right, let's write a different melody. Let's perhaps write something that's a little bit says more in less time and is perhaps simpler and more complicated at the same time. Is that possible? So again, C minor. How about something like... That's kind of cool. Perhaps you like that. Nice. So again, get creative. Use your imagination. Try to sing in your head if that makes sense to you. I find like that helps a lot. And I didn't come up with that. If you listen to the best guitar players on the planet, they'll talk about singing out the line, or the best music producers. A lot of them are singing melodies that may end up instrumental on the record like this. So definitely helpful. Let's show you, what if we try to create a melody that's a lot slower? It's almost like less melodic, maybe half notes. So that low starts to sound like a bass line. So right there, that's an example of not really any phrasing in there. I want to add probably some silence, like here, so that this part is the question. Maybe I take it to a quarter note. Maybe I get rid of that last note. Cool. So let's show you how you can make a melody like that a lot more interesting with some pitch bend. So let's make this MIDI bigger. If I were to write a slow melody, perhaps I want a little bit more movement or identity to it. You can create like kind of a cool D-tone sound, really dissonant. Almost sounds like it is definitely going out of key. But if we're slightly dancing around it, that could just even doing it like randomly can a lot of times create trippiness. Nice. So one final thing I will leave you with regards to melody writing. We talked about phrasing. We talked about some phrase manipulation techniques. But the other thing I want to really leave you with is this concept of patterns in music. If we take a step back and we think about like all of the different ways we can make things patterns, we really can unlock so many different compositional techniques. And if we were to analyze some of the greatest melodies of all time, music is really just like patterns of sound or organized noise, as other people have said. So if I were to take something like this, let's simplify it a little bit, get rid of our pitch bend. Let's do just a straight quarter note. So if I just do like 3 quarter notes in a row and I were to keep repeating that rhythm, because I'm repeating something, it will go a long way to make it sound like it's intentional, even though it's random. And you might have noticed that this one was supposed to be on the downbeat. That one too. But you can kind of hear that all of a sudden this, because there's some sort of reason to it, starts to sound very melodic. And then finally, if you don't know if the scale isn't enough information, perhaps to tell you what note you want to start on, or perhaps you run out of ideas, you can always look at the chords. And these notes that you're playing for your chords will always work in the melody. So like for instance, let's say I don't know where to start. I'll pick one of these notes. I could start a melody on E flat, go up here to E flat. Cool. So sky's the limit. Let's apply that one more time. If I go to the third measure, say I want to change the notes. Oh, here we go. We get a B flat. If I come in here, I haven't used a B flat yet. I could go to a B flat there. arpeggio action. So yeah, hopefully you found this helpful. We covered a lot of different melody writing techniques. This is obviously just grazing the surface of what we can do melody writing. But I wanted to address writing in key, talk about some of the techniques, again, from this book, Music Theory for Electronic Producers. I will link to that below. If you have a copy of the book and it's helped you produce, leave me a comment. I always love hearing about it. And again, if you have watched any of these videos, music theory breakdowns, Wish I Knews, and they've helped at all with your songwriting or your production, drop a link to your track in the comments. I'll definitely listen to them and showcase any ones that I think are like diamonds in the rough. So if you found this helpful, you'd help me out by subscribing to the channel. And if you do, I'll see you guys next time. Till then, happy producing.